Coming up on our newscast, while a CNN report shows North Korea's new satellite control center is ready to launch a rocket, South Korean government officials say there are no signs of such provocative acts just yet. Volkswagen CEO Martin Winterkorn steps down from his post, clearly abandoning ship as the emission scandal continues to drive down the world's second largest automaker's value. And in Mina, outside the Muslim holy city of Mecca, where some 2 million people gather for the annual Hajj pilgrimage, a stampede kills hundreds of people. All this on this edition of Primetime News. Hello, welcome to Primetime News on this Thursday, September 24th. I'm Daniel Choy.
And I'm Hwang Ji-hye. Thank you for joining us.
Well, there's growing concern that North Korea could launch a long-range rocket next month.
And despite such speculations, a South Korean government official says an imminent launch is unlikely. Connie Kim has our top story.
There are no signs yet of an imminent rocket launch in North Korea, despite widespread speculation the regime is preparing to conduct a launch next month to mark a key anniversary. A senior South Korean government official said Thursday that there hasn't been any activity to suggest a launch at North Korea's Dongchangni missile launch site, nor has there been an increase in facility or personnel movement from last year. He said, however, a cover has been installed over the launch pad, which could be used to hide preparations, and the area around the launch site has been cleared. This comes after senior officials at North Korea's new satellite control center told CNN in an exclusive interview on Wednesday that a rocket launch is imminent. South Korean government and military officials say they're closely monitoring any unusual activity at the launch site. The officials say if North Korea were to conduct a launch to coincide with the 70th anniversary of its ruling Workers' Party on October 10th, they would expect the North to transfer the rocket to the launch site by the end of this month. Rocket assembly and fuel injection are estimated to take about a week. South Korean government authorities say if a rocket is launched, it will use an upgraded engine that's similar to the one used for its last satellite launch in late 2012. Experts predict the rocket could carry a payload into orbit that's 5 times heavier than the previously launched satellite. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
As the two Koreas are in a state of armistice, not truce, it's crucial to be prepared militarily. The latest such effort from Seoul is establishing a special operations unit targeting Pyongyang's key military facilities in an emergency situation or if a war breaks out. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
South Korea's Army Special Forces train day and night to ensure they are always ready for the worst-case scenario. If called upon in a real-life situation, the most elite branch in the South Korean Army can target key military targets in North Korea. With a range of tactics, including assassinations and missions aimed at confusing the enemy. Now, South Korea's Special Warfare Command is planning to establish a covert unit that will specialize in taking out key North Korean military facilities, including nuclear and ballistic missile sites, if necessary.
We will be able to conduct operations in North Korea. We can carry out operations independently, but we would need support from the U.S.
One of the 6 brigades under the Special Warfare Command will be turned into a covert operations unit. The unit will conduct independent training operations and will have the necessary air support for its missions. Osprey transport helicopters and attack AC-130 gunships are expected to support the special forces during their missions. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
South Korea is accelerating preparations for a round of inter-Korean family reunions slated for next month. The Unification Ministry says it has sent some 40 workers to the venue to do repairs and maintenance. The group will return tomorrow, but 60 more will either commute to or stay at the venue on Mount Kumgang after the Chuseok holiday with the goal of finishing the work before the event that's scheduled for October 20th to the 26th. Pyongyang has rejected Seoul's lawmakers' visit to the Kaesong Industrial Complex related to the parliament's annual audit of state affairs. The National Assembly's Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee had planned to inspect South Korean factories in the complex and examine the working environments. A committee member told Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency that Pyongyang gave its final no through Seoul's Unification Ministry on Wednesday. The North criticized the committee for raising Pyongyang's human rights record as part of its request to visit the site.
South Korean President Park Geun-hye will embark on a trip to the U.S. to deliver a series of speeches in the United Nations on issues including policies related to North Korea. Kim Ji-yeon asked local experts on what they expected from her upcoming speeches.
During her trip to the U.S., President Park Geun-hye is expected to make at least 8 speeches that will include policies directed towards North Korea. The timing of her speeches is critical as there's growing speculations over further provocations from Pyongyang, including a possible rocket launch in October, marking the 70th anniversary of the founding of North Korea's ruling Workers' Party. The presidential office of Cheongwade said Thursday that it's too early to say for certain what she'll mention during her trip. But the consensus among local experts seems to be that the president will elaborate on her two-track policy concerning the North. 2 local experts also told Arirang News that they expect the president will strongly warn the regime from engaging in further provocations, while also stating that it's important the 2 Koreas work together in the humanitarian front.
I expect the president to call for inter-Korean cooperation concerning the resumption of reunions of families separated during the Korean War. She's expected to say that she doesn't want the reunions to come to a standstill or become a political controversy if North Korea launches a missile in October.
I expect the president to deliver a strong message towards North Korea so that it could refrain from further nuclear weapons development, as such actions will be a clear violation of UN resolutions. She is also expected to call for tougher sanctions if the North continues to engage in further provocations.
The 2 researchers added the president is to reiterate the importance of a reunified Korea, as she did in a keynote address to the UN General Assembly last year, and gained widespread support from the international community. Among President Park's remarks was that reunification would highly contribute in promoting peace and security in Northeast Asia. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And to watch the President's United Nations General Assembly speech live, you can tune into Arirang TV station that you're watching right now. President Park will deliver 2 speeches at the UN, one for the UN Sustainable Development Summit this Saturday at 10 a.m. New York time or 11 p.m. Korea time. The other address is for the UN General Assembly, which will begin next Monday at noon New York time or Tuesday at 1 a.m. Korea time. We will also broadcast several roundtable discussions on the UN meetings throughout President Park's visit to the U.S., which starts Friday and continues through Monday. Arirang TV reaches out to 120 million households worldwide and most recently joined the UN's in-house network in July.
Chinese President Xi Jinping, currently on a visit to the U.S. in a very tight schedule, has expressed his desire to strengthen ties with Washington. Our Lee Soo-eun reports.
On the second day of his visit to the U.S., President Xi Jinping participated in a roundtable discussion in Seattle with top executives from prominent U.S. and Chinese corporations. The Chinese leader emphasized that strengthening the 2 nations' trade cooperation will not only bring benefits to both sides, but also promote world's prosperity. He then made it clear that China will be more open to foreign business and vowed to reduce barriers to foreign investment and improve intellectual property protections. This was followed by a visit to the Microsoft headquarters, where President Xi spoke at the 8th annual U.S.-China Internet Industry Forum, joined by Bill Gates of Microsoft and Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. Alongside some of China's internet leaders, Xi reportedly stated that China and the U.S. must work together in creating a secure, more stable and prosperous cyberspace. He also added that China does not engage in commercial cyber theft and hacking, as cybercrime has been an issue straining Beijing-Washington ties from time to time. Chinese media assess Xi's visit to Seattle as a careful showcasing of China's national image and values, On this, the China Daily commented that progress in the bilateral relation is widely apparent. Following the forum, Xi visited a Boeing factory and a local high school in Seattle, and then finished the day's agenda with a closed-door reception with Chinese-American immigrants. He is scheduled to head to Washington, D.C. on Thursday to meet with U.S. President Barack Obama. Lee Soo-in, Arirang News.
Pope Francis, who's visiting the U.S. this week, is now set to make the first papal speech to the U.S. Congress. On Wednesday, the pontiff spoke to a crowd of more than 15,000 people on a series of pressing issues like immigration and climate change. Our Woo Soo-young has the details.
Addressing a crowd of thousands at the White House on Wednesday, the Pope called for urgent action on tackling climate change, saying it can no longer be left to a future generation. He said there had to be a serious and responsible recognition of the conditions facing the world's children. He also called on the US to protect religious liberties, saying it was one of America's most precious possessions. The Pope also encouraged the nation to build an inclusive society by welcoming immigrants. After his address, officials say Pope Francis held private talks with President Obama for about 40 minutes. Later in the day, at the Cathedral of St. Matthew in Washington, the pontiff touched upon the controversial sexual scandal involving members of the Catholic Church.
I know how much the pain of recent years has weighed upon you, and I have supported your generous commitment to bring healing to victims and to work to ensure that such crimes will never be repeated.
The Pope may meet with victims of sexual abuse over the next few days. The Vatican, however, says it will announce the meetings after they are held to protect the victims' privacy. This is the first time in 7 years that a papal visit has been made to the US. For the rest of his trip, the Holy Father will tour various landmarks in New York City and Philadelphia. He will make the first ever papal speech to the US Congress on Thursday, followed by another speech at the UN General Assembly on Friday. Woo Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now let's turn our attention to the latest on the corporate scandal engulfing German automaker Volkswagen. The emissions fiasco was just the tip of the iceberg. The New York Times said the automobile industry has a long history of dodging regulations even before the auto giant admitted that it had cheated on U.S. pollution tests. It said that for decades, car companies found ways to manipulate mileage and emissions testing data, mentioning Ford as an example. It went on to say that while such practices have been banned by regulators, they have continued and become more sophisticated, as seen in the Volkswagen case. In light of the incident, the German automaker CEO resigned after an emergency executive meeting on Wednesday. The Volkswagen scandal brings to attention the regulations and testing of emission standards around the world. Our Kwon Jang-won takes a deeper look into the standards used now and how things may change in the future.
Diesel cars in Korea have been on the rise. According to industry data, there has been an 18% increase from last year, and over 50% of newly registered vehicles in 2015 have a diesel engine. But with the recent Volkswagen emissions rigging scandal, these numbers are likely to change. It is estimated that over 150,000 Volkswagen cars in Korea are affected by the software cheat, emitting up to almost 40 times more noxious gases than regulation allow. Korea follows European emission standard, and it is the Ministry of Environment that makes sure the cars meet them.
We follow the same standards as Europe. We've been following the Euro 6 standard since September last year, and starting this month, all automobiles need to meet it.
But to meet regulations, cars only need to pass tests that are performed in labs and not on the road. Volkswagen took advantage of this fact and used a software that could detect when a car was being tested to activate a system that gave positive results. And under the current testing system, it was not possible for regulators to spot Volkswagen's deception. But that is set to change in 2 years' time.
European regulators are getting ready to perform emissions tests on roads from September of 2017, and Korea will follow suit. We will continue to monitor before then, but it's difficult for us to set new industry standards and start road tests before Europe does.
For now, it seems that the burden rests on independent regulators to test and give a real measure of what and how much of it comes out of our cars. Kwon Jang-won, Arirang News.
Korea's finance minister presented a rather positive outlook on the Chinese economy, but cautioned on too much optimism. Our Lee Ji-won reports.
Korea's finance minister Choi Kyung-hwan said the country will stay alert on China's economic slowdown and will come up with measures accordingly. At an economic ministerial meeting on Thursday, the minister said Korea's economic growth showed a negative outlook following China's stock fluctuations. But he added China's economic uncertainty is only temporary.
Considering the recovery of the real estate market and the Chinese government's budget, it is very unlikely that China's economy will experience a hard landing.
Furthermore, he emphasized on the importance of analyzing changes in China's growth strategies and use them as an opportunity, since China is one of Korea's most important trade and investment partners. The minister said that measures will be implemented following the outcome of President Park's visit to China. During her visit, President Park established economic promises, including small and medium-sized enterprises settlement in China's local market. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Korea's terms of trade improved in August as import prices fell at a faster rate than export prices. The Bank of Korea says the country's net terms of trade index for products stood at just over 100 in August, up 11.6% on year. The index measures the quantity of import goods a country can buy per each unit of its export goods. In August, Korea's import prices tumbled 19% on year, while export prices fell 12%. The index has been on an upward trend since September last year.
For international news headlines, we turn to Bruce Harrison at the News Center.
Today's focus: a stampede kills hundreds near Mecca. The European Union promises fresh aid to Syrian refugees and an eco-oasis in an unexpected urban environment.
Bruce, hundreds were killed on the road to the Muslim city of Mecca. How did it happen?
Ji-hye, the annual pilgrimage, or Hajj, is supposed to be a peaceful event, but it turned chaotic as two large groups of pilgrims met at a crossroads outside the city, and more than 700 were crushed to death. Around 2 million people make the pilgrimage every year, and it's considered the largest gathering of people in the world. The Saudi Arabia government also says more than 800 people were injured in the crush. Disaster has plagued the pilgrimage before. In 2006, 346 people were killed in a similar stampede. Riots and tent fires have also broken out in the past, but infrastructure upgrades and extensive spending on crowd control technology by the government over the past 2 decades had made such incidents far less common. Just 2 weeks ago, 110 people died in Mecca's Grand Mosque after a crane collapsed. European Union leaders have agreed to boost border controls and provide aid for refugees camped near their home countries, as those leaders still disagree over how to resolve the refugee crisis. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Another 1 billion euros, or roughly $1.1 billion will be set aside to help UN agencies support Syrian refugees. The decision came after a 7-hour summit of European Union leaders in Brussels as they discuss ways to curb the influx of migrants that hit record highs this summer. The financial support is aimed at extending help to Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey, from where millions of Syrians have fled since 2011. The leaders also agreed to strengthen the EU's borders.
It is clear that the greatest tide of refugees and migrants is yet to come. Therefore, we need to correct the policy of open doors and windows. Now the focus should be on the proper protection of our external borders and on external assistance to refugees and the countries in our neighborhood.
To achieve this, they agreed to set up hotspots to register and fingerprint new migrants in border countries such as Italy and Greece. They will also begin the process of relocating Syrians and others who need protection to other EU nations and sending back people regarded as economic migrants. About 500,000 migrants have arrived in Europe this year, and many EU countries have been reluctant about a plan to relocate 120,000 migrants who are already in the EU. A day earlier, a group of EU interior ministers agreed to allocate the migrants across 28 states based on a quota system, despite fierce opposition from 4 Eastern European countries, including Hungary and Slovakia. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Large amounts of wildlife are rare in the world's major urban environments, but in Toronto, nature has reclaimed a small part of Canada's largest city. The Leslie Street Spit is a man-made peninsula that juts 5 kilometers into Lake Ontario. It was built 60 years ago to expand the harbor, but when a jump in shipping never came, construction companies began dumping waste there. The Spit is now home to 400 plant species, and an abundance of wildlife thrives among wildflower meadows, forests, and marshland built by the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority.
We've probably seen 30 species of birds. And we're right next to one of the largest city in Canada, right in it. So it's spectacular.
The Spit may draw attention at this year's United Nations Global Summit on Climate Change. The urban nature habitat provides a good example of how urban expansion and ecology coexist in harmony. And those are today's stories. Have a great night.
Another afternoon heat swept the capital area, with Seoul soaring to 30.6 degrees Celsius, and Gwangju City in Gyeonggi-do Province reaching 31.9 degrees under plenty of sunshine, while the eastern parts of the country had a breezy and cloudy day today. And Friday is also going to be warm and sunny, but despite high temperatures, a breezy morning and evening will persist across much of the country, so beware of big temperature differences. In fact, these warm conditions will continue into the Chuseok holiday under clear skies, which means that the supermoon expected for Chuseok will be visible throughout the night, and any outdoor activities during the holiday should not be a concern either. On that note, let's take a closer look at the readings for tomorrow. The low in Seoul will kick off at 18, but the mercury will go up to 29, while Daegu and Gwangju will be rising to 25 and 28, and Busan will be topping out at 26. And as for the other regions, it looks like Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 28 and 24, while Dokdo climbs up to 22. That's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Do you remember when you were a part of that sports day when you were a little tyke?
I know. But I was good at running, so it was a pleasant memory.
Good for you. I remember not running because I remember not running if you can't win. But that's the end of our newscast for you. Thank you so much for staying with us.
We will be back same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.